What if the man whom America still calls the father of all is carrying a secret powerful enough to shake the entire image he has built throughout his life? That question didn't come from the media or public opinion, but arose in the moment Tracy Reiner fell silent as she looked at the documents before her. The numbers were clear, cold, and left no room for misinterpretation. They didn't judge, but they couldn't be distorted either. Initially, Tracy was only looking for familiar procedures after a loss: the final inheritance papers, legal details of the assets, the usual administrative traces. But instead of a closure, she stumbled upon a question never before asked. Between the pages of the file was the trace of a six-figure money transfer made discreetly years ago, sent to a name that was almost unknown. In that moment, Tracy understood that some stories don't make the front page of newspapers, but silently exist, waiting to be seen again in a different light. Before we continue, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any upcoming content. A payment, an unusual sign, and suddenly, everything Tracy Reiner ever believed about her father, Rob Reiner, seemed to vanish. The Hollywood icon, the pillar of the family, the moral role model for an entire generation, now appeared in her eyes in a completely different light. You think you know a person well, until the ledger tells a different story. In this investigation, that story begins where most tragedies start. Not with sensational headlines, but with quietly overlooked details, where everything seems to end with two deceased parents, the scene at Brentwood, and a broken family. But this case is only the beginning, because Tracy now has a voice, and she decides to use it. Before delving into the next steps, let's look at what she discovered: the mysterious money, missing employee records, a previously unpublished email chain, and hidden diary entries. Behind the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, you need to understand the context from which this story originates. This isn't just a personal case, it's a story of secrets, betrayals, and hidden decisions. And if you haven't questioned the perfect facade, you certainly will when you delve into the details. Rob Reiner, known to America as the brilliant director of When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, and A Few Good Men, has left a profound mark over the decades. He's not just successful. He's also seen by the public as straightforward, ethical, trustworthy, and progressive. To his friends, he's a respected role model, a powerful influence. But to his family, the story begins to unravel, for behind the smiles and Hollywood glamour lie secrets no one wants to confront. The Reiner family was once considered untouchable: power, money, family background. Everything was perfect. But that veil has now crumbled. On December 28th, at 11:46 p.m., the Los Angeles Emergency Coordination Center received a 911 call from the $13.5 million Brentwood estate where Rob and Michelle Reiner lived. A fortress with ocean views, high walls, and state-of-the-art security, but all the protection seemed insufficient. When rescuers arrived, they entered a haunting scene. Rob and Michelle were found with serious injuries. There were no signs of forced entry. The horror unfolded in the privacy of a public residence. But what shocked investigators most was that their son, Nick Reiner, 32, was present on the property, just steps away, his face calm and emotionless. By dawn, he had been handcuffed and faced serious charges. Another haunting detail: their daughter, Romy, 27, was the one who discovered the bodies. As officers tried to comfort her, her whispered words haunted them for days. There was a member of this family who was truly dangerous. And she pointed to Nick. But why? This was the question everyone, reporters, detectives, neighbors, and former co-stars, was asking themselves. Nick Reiner had struggled with drugs, rehabilitation, failed film projects, and conflict with his father. But everything only revealed part of the story. Only when Tracy quietly stepped out, almost hesitantly, did things begin to become clear. She hadn't witnessed the scene, but what she found in the financial records was the crucial piece of the puzzle. A mysterious payment, a string of emails, and unaddressed manila envelopes, containing data from nearly 4 years prior, indicated transactions had been conducted secretly. No clear business reason, no accompanying legal documents, just numbers and strange clues that Tracy couldn't ignore. Through analyzing ledgers, documents, and emails, Tracy uncovered a previously unknown part of the story. A story of hidden secrets, perplexing choices, and decisions that had been kept secret for a long time. After 6 days of deliberation, she decided to make a part of it public, shedding light on what had been concealed, so that people could begin to better understand the world behind the sensational headlines. Tracy wasn't one to speak out. She was discreet, quiet, and always guided by her protective instincts. But after losing both her parents in a devastating tragedy, she couldn't ignore the storm of emotions raging within her. She admitted that she had tried to suppress her feelings, tried to believe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe her father was covering for someone else. Maybe it wasn't all that serious. But what if it was serious? If the story was true, if Nick knew and confronted his parents, if Romy knew, would that be why she called the police? Suddenly, everything made sense in a disturbing way. Tracy did something most people wouldn't. She stood up, used her voice, and revealed that her father had spent a mysterious sum of money. Why did this matter? You might think, well, he's rich. People spend money on each other all the time. But this isn't just a sensationalist scandal or tabloid sensation. It's a story about responsibility, about the consequences of secrets accumulating over time, and about how even the most admired can be held accountable. Respected figures can harbor dark sides, and if Rob Reiner is no exception, what does that say about the environment and system surrounding him? It raises big questions for the rest of the Reiner family, especially Nick, who can unleash his anger in twisted and dangerous ways. Tracy's discovery ignites a storm. Reporters track the former employee's identity. Cyber investigators monitor transactions. The former lawyer remains silent, and a source reveals other mysterious payments, raising the question, was this a temporary cover-up or a long-running chain of events? And that's just the beginning. As Tracy follows the trail, she uncovers more than one secret. She opens a door to a web of fear, betrayal, and possibly more dangerous things, even violence. In the first chapter, we follow her as she explores her family's finances, where she records and discovers something so horrifying that it completely alters her perspective on her childhood, her life, and her father's legacy. But what follows turns everything upside down. Have you ever opened a drawer, hoping to find a bill, only to discover something that could change the entire family fortune? That's exactly what happens to Tracy Reiner. She wasn't looking for this, wasn't playing detective. It was all to understand the chaos following her parents' deaths. The vast estate, the assets, the trust, the copyrights, the real estate. Everything you imagine about a powerful Hollywood family. None of it prepared her for what she was about to see. After the funeral, while the world watched the tears and eulogies, Tracy had to face reality. She was the one managing the remaining estate. Lawyers were busy, appraisers were conducting surveys, and the board of trustees were inquiring about account access, all creating a complex machine that someone had to operate. Despite her mixed emotions, she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She thought it would be simple, but reality never is. In the basement office, the first warning signs weren't screams, but whispers. Tracy descended to the office on the ground floor of the Brentwood house, where her father kept his personal files. Outside it was hot. Inside it was cold, damp, and so quiet that loneliness could be cut through. Framed movie posters hung on the walls. The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, and on the desk lay a jumble of letters, papers, and scribbled notes. But what caught her attention was a black box near the safe, simply labeled Archived Documents. Inside, folders were organized by year: 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024. And another envelope, sealed, unmarked, only weight and mystery mattered. Tracy's hands trembled, but she opened it anyway. Inside were transfer papers, a September 2024 authorization for a large sum of money transferred to an account unrelated to any known partners. The note simply read, "Deal privately, dear." No legal counsel. No invoices, no tax records. Number 1099s, just Rob Reiner's signature. This wasn't charity, not business. It was personal. But the puzzling thing was that Rob Reiner never did anything personal without supervision. Every donation, speech, endorsement was transparent. So why is this time different? Who is Yim? What will this old email account reveal? And this is just the beginning of the discoveries Tracy will follow on her complex journey ahead. Tracy blinked. This wasn't charity, nor was it business. This was personal. But what shocked her was the fact that Rob Reiner, always known for his transparency, with all donations, speeches, and testimonials conducted through official channels, could act differently in this case. Why now? Why this? And who was Yim, with an old email account she'd never heard of? A knot tightened in Tracy's stomach, and she realized she wasn't just stepping into a mystery, but was a part of it. In that moment, she remembered her mother, Michelle, who used to keep a spare laptop in a drawer. An old, dusty MacBook, untouched for years. She took it out, plugged it in, logged in, and immediately, within her personal documents, a file titled Incident Notes appeared. Initially, the file wouldn't open, it was password protected. But Michelle, though deceased, left a clue that Tracy recognized. She tried familiar methods and finally managed to open the file. The notes inside were only 4 paragraphs long, but each word felt like a punch to her chest. Michelle recounted an incident involving a male employee named E.M., which occurred upstairs, in the hallway, one night while she and Rob were entertaining a client. The employee, terrified, left the next day, wanting only recognition, while Rob remained silent. That's best for everyone, Michelle wrote. She also mentioned that Nick, their son, had overheard part of the argument. Michelle concluded with the chilling statement, "I hate how he erased everything. Nick will probably never forgive him." Tracy stood outside the guest house where Nick had stayed, the very place where police found him after the crime. The door remained locked, the yellow ribbon fluttering in the wind, and inside, the smell of old marijuana and traces of pain and chaos lingered. Bottles, unfinished scripts, and on the bedside table, a notebook with Nick's scribbled handwriting, as if nothing had ever happened. Tracy brought all of her mother's financial records and notes to the estate lawyer. When she pressed him about the mysterious money, the lawyer simply replied, "This was settled privately." Settled privately? Why were there no legal records or confidentiality agreements? According to an anonymous former assistant, there had been a settlement, but with an absolute condition: no written record would be left. So why did this still leak out? The story of the missing employee began to unfold. Tracy compared the list of former employees, payroll records, and work schedules. Everything showed signs of irregularities. Elliot Martin, a property management assistant hired in 2023, ended up disappearing completely in 2024. No LinkedIn, no current address, no forwarded email. A gardener who used to work with Elliot revealed that one day he arrived trembling and the next day he vanished, saying he couldn't stay in the house another second. Tracy wondered, what happened in that hallway? What did Rob do to make this employee leave? What did Nick hear? And how did what he witnessed affect his behavior? The deeper Tracy dug, the more confused things became. Was her father still the same person she knew? Or had she lived her whole life under the roof of a completely different person? The final straw came when she called one of Rob's oldest relatives, a former co-worker from several films. She asked directly, "Do you think my dad is capable of doing that? What's so bad?" A long silence ensued before a hesitant answer was given. Rob would do anything to protect what he had built and to keep his daughter's debt a secret. So what would a daughter do with this truth? Bury it or expose it? Tracy chose to expose it. She met with a journalist, handing over all the transfer documents, notes, notebooks, and the truth. The journalist's first question, "Do you believe your father's death was revenge?" Tracy admitted she didn't know, but believed her father had feared something. Weeks later, it was discovered the hush money was only part of a much larger plan. The silence of the RER house that night, according to the first responders, was chilling. Too silent for a house that had just witnessed a double murder. No alarms, no screams, only the terrified gasps of a daughter trapped in a nightmare. This wasn't a robbery, it was a private, precise, and personal matter, but as the truth gradually unfolded, it was stained with pain and blood. December 28, 2025, a cool Sunday, but fate left a horrifying mark. Let's rewind a bit. It was an evening in Brentwood, quiet, elegant, with the faint scent of jasmine mingled with expensive perfume and the serene silence of the upper class. The Reiner mansion, nestled on the edge of a cul-de-sac along a cliff, stood like a formidable fortress in the night. Inside, Rob Reiner, 78, and his wife, Michelle, 70, were enjoying a peaceful evening. A small dinner, no guests, no press, no noise, just the two of them. According to the call log, at around 10 p.m., Michelle made a 7-minute call to a close friend, seemingly to discuss New Year's plans. Meanwhile, Rob's phone had been out of service since approximately 9:38 p.m. For the rest of the evening, there were no calls, the house shrouded in darkness and silence. At 11:41 p.m., their daughter, Romy, woke up. Her fateful 911 call had changed everything. Romy, 27, had made a surprise visit to the house. A late, unusual visit, but not unprecedented. The family was still reeling from recent tensions, and Romy hadn't spoken to her mother in 2 days. A premonition compelled her to come immediately. She parked behind the gate, walked through the side entrance, and entered the marble-tiled foyer. Only her footsteps echoed. She called out, but there was no answer. Entering the living room, Romy froze. Michelle Reiner's body lay slumped on the cream-colored suede sofa. Her blouse was soaked, blood staining the floor like a melting nightmare on the carpet. Romy screamed, panicked, and ran, stumbling in the kitchen where Rob Reiner lay face down on the floor. Blood splattered on the refrigerator door, one hand clutching the doorknob as if trying to escape, as if he knew 911 would be called. A recording of the 911 call was later partially released. In gasps and sobs, Romy said, "I think they're dead. Oh my God, my parents. Please." But then there was a pause, and she whispered, "I think he did it. Nick." LAPD units arrived 13 minutes later, 3 police cars, 2 ambulances, sirens blaring across the hills. They searched every room and found Nick Reiner in the living room, sitting on the edge of the sofa, shirtless, drenched in sweat, his hands covering his face. Around him were dried bloodstains, a half-empty bottle of tequila, and on the table, a torn family photo. When arrested, Nick offered no resistance. He mumbled, "I knew this would end." Police handcuffed him and let him out, silently, without struggle or tears. A neighbor said he looked remarkably calm, almost free, leaving everyone wondering why a son could murder his own parents. The Reiner family, from the outside, didn't seem unstable. Nick Reiner was the quiet one, the black sheep of the family. He had struggled with drugs, anxiety, failed scenarios, and conflicts with his father, but there was no publicly documented violence, no restraining order, no threats. So what changed? The subsequent autopsy report revealed Michelle Reiner had been stabbed 7 times, with self-defense wounds on her hand, and a time of death estimated at approximately 10:23 p.m. Rob Reiner was stabbed 5 times, with no signs of self-defense, and his time of death was estimated at around 10:27, suggesting he may have been attacked from behind. Forensic experts concluded the attacker was familiar with the house's layout. There were no signs of forced entry, and the 2 separate attacks occurred within minutes, precise, deliberate, not a fit of rage. Another strange detail: none of the security cameras captured footage of the scene. The data server was manually shut down at 9:58 p.m. Who shut it down? Nick claims he doesn't know the password, but logs show the code was entered from the main control panel inside the house, a code only Rob, Michelle, and Romy knew. Was this a deliberate act to lure the couple downstairs, or an internal murder? The Los Angeles Police Department didn't reveal much, but Romy began to recount her story, and what she told sent chills down the spines of both the police and those following the case. The interview with Romy Reiner was one of the most tense moments of the entire investigation. The atmosphere was heavy, almost suffocating, even in the small, carefully soundproofed room of the Los Angeles Police Department. Romy, 27, sat across from the detectives, her eyes wide, still bearing traces of tears on her cheeks, her hands trembling on the table. She began to recount the stressful months leading up to the case. "Dad and Nick hadn't spoken in a long time. Months had passed, but I heard them arguing weeks before it happened," Romy confided. She described in detail the final confrontation that took place at a Thanksgiving gathering. Nick arrived late, drunk, and the conversation quickly turned into a fight. Rob Reiner talked about growing up, about responsibility, about failures, things Nick refused to listen to. "You never admit your failures," Nick yelled. Romy said it was the first time she'd heard her younger brother raise his voice at their father, looking at Rob with hatred. Then Nick left the gathering, silently disappearing until the night of the murder. From here, the story became more convoluted and complicated. Some close to the family began whispering that Nick hadn't acted alone, while others insisted he was innocent. A former maid, speaking anonymously to the LA Times, revealed Nick wasn't capable of doing something like that. He might have been hurt, but he loved his mother and would never harm her. A detail about the timing also puzzled investigators. Romy arrived home around 11:30 p.m., while the murder had occurred more than an hour earlier. Where was Nick during that time? Was he unconscious? Or was someone else present? Such details made any hypothesis about a second perpetrator or an inside crime difficult to explain. Another strange sight was discovered in the kitchen where Rob died. The refrigerator was slightly ajar, and a jar and a glass of orange juice remained untouched on the table. This was significant because Rob had diabetes. He often drank fruit juice when his blood sugar dropped. Was he preparing for treatment, or had the attacker taken advantage of this moment to carry out the ambush, knowing he would be vulnerable? The single glass became symbolic for all investigators. Was Rob caught by surprise, ambushed, or did he know something beforehand? The next morning, as the news spread, the world exploded. Sensational headlines in newspapers. Hollywood tragedy. Director's parents stabbed at Brentwood mansion. Director's son arrested for double murder. Social media quickly turned the Reiner family into a hashtag. Reporters swarmed the mansion, digging into the family history, and long-hidden secrets gradually came to light. Meanwhile, Tracy Reiner, Romy's sister, told the press, "We are grieving. We are shocked. But above all, we are seeking the truth, because I believe there is much more to this story yet to be revealed." Tracy's words serve as a subtle warning. This case is not simple, and what is about to be revealed will change everything we know about their family. Chapter 3 will reveal what Romy whispered to the officers, the fear that haunted her throughout that horrific evening, the things she knew but dared not say, and how that fear may have influenced the story in completely unexpected ways. Her warning, though soft, resonates deeply. The sole witness to the double murder, Rob and Michelle's youngest daughter, carries secrets that, if revealed, would completely overturn the entire investigation. That witness, Romy Reiner, her voice barely a whisper, unveiled an increasingly complex family mystery, leaving everyone wondering, was she telling the truth or concealing something? And could the perpetrator still be lurking around, silently watching the family and the police? In a private area, behind closed doors, under soft lighting, Romy Reiner sat opposite two detectives and two psychological counselors. The silence was so profound that the ticking of the clock on the wall was clearly audible, each tick emphasizing the tension in the room. A small table sat between them, its teapot still steaming, but Romy shook her head in refusal. Instead, she made an unusual request. Can the door be locked? Not just closed, but bolted. The detectives exchanged glances, a brief but meaningful moment, then complied. Romy took a deep breath, closed her eyes slightly as if trying to concentrate, then whispered, "There's a dangerous person among us." The officers stared, unsure how to interpret that. Was she referring to Nick, who had been arrested, or someone else? When asked for clarification, Romy simply shook her head. "I just want to feel safe." Fear was etched on her face, her hands clenched into fists. In sworn testimony, Romy continued, "It didn't just happen that one night. It's been a build-up, years of tension, many secrets. I've seen things I should never have seen, heard things I should never have heard." She emphasized a dark rule in the Reiner family. Unspoken things accumulate, seeping into life, and once unearthed, they erupt like a storm. "That phrase is dangerous," she added, her voice trembling but firm. "Not everyone who looks innocent is mysterious, but they are intentional." Romy's fear prompted the detectives to contact Tracy, hoping her sister could explain these cryptic words. But Tracy simply replied, she wasn't crazy. She was afraid because she knew what she had heard. And if what Romy thought was true, Nick might not be the only one who needed to be questioned. The investigators were startled. More suspects? Was Romy hinting at a larger conspiracy? Or worse, was someone trying to manipulate her perception? Romy continued, and this time it was a shocking revelation. I heard an argument, but it wasn't Nick. I remember the voice clearly. It was older, deeper. My mother was yelling at someone about money and protecting their reputation. Son, you promised this would never come back. I swore. I left before I heard the rest, but I'm sure it wasn't Nick. The person Romy was referring to made things complicated. The family's longtime lawyer, Marshall Finley. Just 2 days before the murder, Finley had appeared at the Brentwood estate, unannounced, and his black Tesla had been spotted by security. The security camera recorded for a few seconds, then mysteriously stopped working. When investigators approached him, he refused to answer, citing attorney-client confidentiality, and just hours later, he withdrew from the estate's legal team. Romy also held crucial evidence. In her car, police found a small leather-bound notebook dated December 22nd, just days before the crime. The scribbled but clear writing read, "They're arguing again." Mom's voice is hoarse. She keeps repeating, mentioning a man named Elliot, saying he's no longer our problem, but Dad looks sick, saying we paid him to go. Why are you still worried? I don't think this is over. I'm starting to think I shouldn't know. The litho, matching the employee Tracy found in the financial records, Elliot Martin, who had received hush money from Rob Reiner. This raised a terrifying possibility. Someone was trying to cover up everything permanently, not just for Elliot, but for other secrets of the Reiner family as well. Some skeptics suggested Romy might be hallucinating, suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, or confusing voices. But forensic psychologists confirmed she was lucid, coherent, and reliable. They determined she was a crucial witness, the only one who could accurately reconstruct the sequence of events. Romy, clearly terrified, uttered something that sent shivers down the investigators' spines, because she could be next. Meanwhile, Nick Reiner, confined to his county jail cell, neither denied nor confessed. One source said he only told the guards, "They think it's just me." A simple yet profound statement, leaving everyone pondering the danger that still lurks. Romy was taken to a safe location outside of California. Tracy refused to reveal her whereabouts, citing safety reasons. In a rare moment, Romy posted a message on Instagram, then deleted it shortly afterward. Losing parents is unbearable. The distorted truth is even worse. Please understand, I'm not hiding. I'm just trying to survive. But Romy didn't stop there. She gave Tracy a secret piece of evidence, hidden just in case it was needed, a memory card. What was on it astonished the entire LAPD. It wasn't just a clue. It was an audio recording that could reveal the motives, even the true nature, of family secrets everyone thought were safe. In that moment, one thing became clear. Silence is sometimes the ultimate form of loyalty, but it can also be the most dangerous when a daughter is faced with a truth that could tear her family apart. For weeks after the murders, Tracy Reiner spoke to almost no one. No interviews, no social media comments, no private or public explanation. Aside from carefully drafted statements from her lawyers, there was no emotional confession, no moment of grief revealed to the cameras. To the outside world, everything seemed cold, calculated, almost suspicious. But behind closed doors, inside the Brentwood mansion, Tracy was slowly breaking down. She wasn't just grieving the deaths of her parents. She carried a much greater burden, a secret she never wanted to know, never wanted to admit. And the reason for her prolonged silence wasn't fear of the media, but fear of the truth. The daughter who had always tried to keep everything together, who had once been the stable pillar of her family, now faced a difficult choice: reveal the secret or remain silent. Tracy Reiner, known for being the family's pillar, organizer, and mediator when emotions run high and decisions need to be made, now faces a challenge greater than anything she's ever encountered. In a family full of strong personalities, Rob's vibrant presence, Michelle's sharp wit, Nick's volatile temperament, and Romy's sensitivity, Tracy learned early on to be quiet, to listen, to absorb, and to wait. Her friends say she was raised to protect the family image at all costs. Not in a devious way, but in a way that ensures survival, something Hollywood families teach their children from a young age. When the crime occurs, Tracy chooses her most familiar approach, to shut everything down. The media swarmed around her, cameras, microphones, and a barrage of questions. Did your brother do it? Do your parents have any enemies? Is this related to money? Is there something you're hiding from us? But Tracy didn't answer. She closed the gate, drew the curtains, and turned off her phone. Inside, she sat alone in the kitchen, the warm yellow light illuminating her sorrowful face, staring at the documents Romy had given her. The diary, the memory card, fragments of a story that refused to be buried. By this point, Tracy knew what the public didn't. This wasn't just about Nick, nor was it just about that night. The memory was still intact, preserved in the words, in every second of the memory card Romy had given her. It was small, unlabeled, and Romy hadn't explained much. I don't want to keep this, and I don't want. The police haven't got it yet. Not yet. Only if you hear it first. That single sentence sent a shiver down Tracy's spine. Back home, she inserted the memory card into her laptop. An audio file, 11 minutes and 43 seconds long, appeared on the screen. Tracy hesitated, her hands trembling. Have you ever been afraid to press the play button? Not just because of what you might hear, but because it could confirm all your deepest suspicions. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the button. Initially, there was a crackling sound, rustling, footsteps, then voices. Michelle's voice was clear, tense, angry. Rob's was lower, defensive. They argued about Elliot, about money, about how to get it over with, without damaging the family's reputation. Michelle said, "Do you think writing a check will fix what he says you did?" Rob replied, "I'm upset. I didn't do what he's implying. And even if I did something stupid, it doesn't justify destroying everything we've built." A long silence followed. Then Michelle uttered words that would change Tracy's life forever. "There's nothing more to say about us." Nick heard it. Romy heard it. "You have no right to decide who will bear the consequences." Footsteps echoed, and the recording ended. Why had this recording never been reported to the police? Because it didn't prove a crime. It proved something else. Knowledge, awareness, and a terrifying truth. Rob Reiner believed that something, an accusation, a secret, a version of events, could destroy a family if exposed. And that meant only one thing. If Tracy handed over the recording, it would not only affect Nick's case, but would rewrite her father's legacy forever. For Tracy, legacy wasn't just awards or headlines. It was the name on the passport, the doors it opened, the rooms it allowed into, and the life it had shaped. Destroying that name, with all its childhood memories, would hurt Romy, complicate Nick's defense, and tarnish everything that remained of Rob and Michelle in the public eye. So she waited. She needed more context, more certainty, more evidence. But deep down, she was also procrastinating because of a hidden fear that this truth would change everything. 2 weeks later, an unexpected call came from a former employee of the Reiner family, someone Tracy never expected to see. A trembling voice on the other end said, "I've heard what happened, and I need to tell you." They met at a quiet cafe, away from all cameras and spy headphones. Small coffee table, soft lighting, a stifling yet warm atmosphere. And that's when Tracy knew that the untold secrets were far greater than she imagined. In the quiet cafe, the soft yellow light illuminating the table, Tracy Reiner listened intently to the former employee's words. The story she heard seemed to clarify everything, but it also opened a haunting door. The woman explained that after Elliot Martin left the mansion, an unwritten rule existed in the house. No one was allowed to mention his name. No one was allowed to ask about him. And anyone who dared to be curious would pay the price with tension or anger. "I don't know what happened between him and your father," the woman said, her voice trembling. "But I know your mother was terrified. Not terrified of him, but terrified of the truth about to be revealed." Tracy sat still, a chill running down her spine. Everything suddenly became clear. Her mother's silent fear wasn't indifference or insensitivity, but a painful effort to keep the family united. She kept the secret not to protect herself, but to shield everyone from the consequences. Guilty surged through Tracy. Imagine realizing that the people you love most are trapped in a secret you never knew. Imagine the truth being revealed, but too late. That silence wasn't protection, it was pressure. That pressure built up, growing day by day, until everything crumbled. Tracy began replaying old moments in her mind. Arguments she had dismissed, tensions she thought were minor, now becoming signs. Nick's anger never had a reason. Romy's anxiety wasn't random. Her mother's sudden mood swings, strange warnings, tense glances between family members. All were clues. And now, Rob and Michelle were gone. Tracy realized something horrifying. She had never chosen to remain silent because she wanted attention. She made her decision because she understood a truth bigger than any scandal, bigger than Nick, bigger than her family. If she remained silent, the false story about Nick would become ingrained, a distorted legend of a lone, deranged killer. And if she let it go, the truth about Rob, Michelle, and their family would be buried forever. So Tracy contacted a journalist she trusted. Not a tabloid, not a gossip monger, but someone who knew how to listen, someone capable of discerning the nuances of the story. She didn't reveal everything at once. She started with the financial records, the timelines, and finally, the existence of the recording Romy had given her. When the journalist asked the question she had long avoided, "Do you believe your father paid a former employee to keep quiet?" Tracy didn't hesitate. "Yes," she answered. As soon as the story went public, everything changed. Public opinion was divided. Some praised her courage, others accused her of betrayal. Social media exploded with two opposing viewpoints. One side saw her as someone who dared to expose the rottenness at the root of power. The other argued she was willing to burn her entire family alive to save her brother. But Tracy, amidst the controversy, focused on a detail she had almost overlooked: the hush money. Reviewing the inheritance documents one last time, she noticed something strange. The payment to Elliot Martin wasn't the final transaction. A smaller, quieter payment, sent just 3 days before the murders, from the same bank, with the same receipt, bearing the inscription, "Final confirmation." Final confirmation to ensure what? And to whom? That question sent a shiver down Tracy's spine. If someone had managed to maintain silence just days before Rob and Michelle were murdered, then Romy's whispered warning might have been accurate. The culprit may not be in prison, may not be dead, and could still be pulling the strings from the shadows, watching, planning. Tracy leaned back in her chair, staring at the computer screen. The truth she had uncovered wasn't over. It had only just begun. And in that moment of silence, she understood that not only Nick, but also other hidden powers, were lurking in the shadows, and that her mission, to bring the truth to light, had only just begun. Because now there's evidence that whatever Rob Reiner feared is still active, still moving, still dangerous. And for Tracy Reiner, a horrifying truth begins to emerge. Elliot Martin's disappearance wasn't a random event. It wasn't simply an employee quitting and vanishing. It was a sign, a warning, a clue to something bigger, darker, and more dangerous than anything the Reiner family ever imagined. In the next chapter, we'll follow Elliot, the mysterious employee who vanished without a trace. We'll delve into the mysterious payments made to eliminate him, and most importantly, ask the question no one dares to voice. What if Elliot Martin didn't disappear voluntarily? How could a man disappear completely mysteriously after just one shift at a Hollywood mansion? No forwarding address, no correspondence, no farewell message, no lawsuit, no trace left behind. Only silence. An obituary had just appeared, and then Elliot Martin, a soft-spoken, discreet man, suddenly became a ghost in his family's memory. According to records, Elliot possessed all the ideal qualities of a private estate manager: discreet, competent, honest, and without a suspicious record. He was 28 when hired, with a clean record and excellent letters of recommendation from reputable sources. Elliot was brought to work at Reiner Estate through a high-end recruitment agency, known for hiring reliable, loyal, and sophisticated personnel. They claimed Elliot was one of their best employees, with no past troubles. He began working at the estate in March 2024, and then, in May, disappeared. No notice, No transfer request, just a single 6-word email. I can't come back. I'm sorry. No explanation, no call. Only silence. That night, everything changed. Tracy, with her keen intuition and determination to uncover the truth, began piecing together the clues. 2 former servants agreed to reveal what they knew, on the condition of anonymity. According to them, on a Saturday, a routine meeting took place at the estate. Elliot, assigned to cleaning duties, was in charge of the upstairs area, the master bedrooms, the study, and the guest hallway. He was last seen at 11:17 p.m., entering the east hallway with a fresh towel and a laundry basket. Then he disappeared. No security, no witnesses, only silence. The next morning, the resignation email was sent. Elliot never received his final paycheck. Tracy contacted the recruitment agency. The manager was initially polite, but when Reiner's estate was mentioned, his tone changed. We're not allowed to discuss former staff arrangements. When Tracy pressed him, explaining the murder, he simply said, "Does this have anything to do with that? I've already said too much." And then he hung up. Tracy knew immediately something terrible had happened. A haunting night, forcing a man to flee, or worse, to be wiped out. Determined to find the truth, Tracy hired a private investigator, a former Los Angeles police officer, professional and direct. They started with the basics. Elliot's last known address in Studio City. The landlord said he had breached his lease, leaving behind only a mattress, 2 chairs, and an empty cupboard. The only things Elliot took with him were his phone and backpack. Surveillance cameras showed him leaving at 3:42 a.m. after sending his resignation email. But no one saw him return. The results of the review of his phone, bank, and social media records only made the story more chilling. His phone number was deactivated, his bank account closed, and his social media accounts wiped clean. It was as if Elliot Martin had never existed. But the strangest thing was that the last email sent to Reiner's family wasn't from his personal Gmail, but from the temporary encryption service Prevote, which automatically deleted itself after sending. The IP address traced back to a public library in Glendale, a place Elliot had never been. Someone had entered, sent the email, and then disappeared. Who sent that email? Was it Elliot, or someone else impersonating him? That mysterious clue told Tracy one thing clearly. This wasn't simply a resignation. This was a cover-up, a warning hidden in the shadows. And now, Tracy knew that everything she was facing, from the murder to the financial secrets, from the family's silence to the dangers from shadowy figures, was just the tip of the iceberg. In a pivotal moment, Tracy finally tracked down Louise, the man who used to look after the estate. A part-time gardener, he had left the estate earlier that summer, but after much hesitation, he agreed to meet Tracy. And what he said confirmed her deepest fears. Louise recounted that Elliot, about a week before he left, had become unusually strange, startled, constantly on guard. He said he no longer felt safe. At first, Louise thought it was just work stress. But then one day, Elliot blurted out, "If something happens to me then." That unfinished sentence haunted Louise. That was the last time she saw Elliot. "Did he tell you what happened?" Tracy asked. Louise hesitated. Elliot had only said that something had happened in the hallway. Something that didn't seem like an accident. Something wasn't right. That vague warning sent a chill down Tracy's spine. Something had clearly happened in that hallway, and Elliot didn't want to be there when the truth was revealed. A host of unanswered questions arose. Had someone crossed the line? Had someone tried to cover it up? Had someone else overheard something they shouldn't have? And the money, was it just for silence? The most haunting question remained. Was Elliot alive? No police report. No missing person notice. On paper, Elliot had simply quit. And if he was paid to disappear, then perhaps he had. But what if the disappearance wasn't voluntary? What if the silence wasn't enough? What if someone wanted to ensure this story would never be brought up again? It was then that Tracy reviewed one last money transfer. A smaller transaction than the previous ones, with the same routing sequence, made 3 days earlier. The recipient was a limited liability company registered in Delaware, almost impossible to trace without inside help. 2 weeks later, the private investigator called Tracy. His voice betrayed his shock. He had traced the trail through a series of shell companies, cross-referencing domain name servers, registration records, and shady tax documents. And the end of that chain of paperwork was a New York law firm, the same one that had worked with Rob Reiner's longtime personal lawyer. The man had been completely silent since the case began to attract attention. Security cameras had captured him near the mansion just hours before the security system suddenly shut down. So ask yourself, was that final payment for Elliot, or for someone who ensured Elliot would disappear permanently? This theory changes everything. A theory circulating among those following the case, that this wasn't just self-preservation by an individual. What if there was someone else, more powerful, behind it all? What really happened to Elliot? What if the mistake wasn't in the initial events, but in how it was covered up? And what if, in the end, someone decided he was a burden, no longer worth protecting? The silence dragged on until Tracy discovered a buried email. An email that no one seemed to want found. Not legal in language, just full of fear. And its contents reversed the entire story. The most dangerous thing wasn't a weapon, but an email that had never been sent. It lay deep among real estate contracts, royalty reports, and dry tax records, on a personal hard drive Tracy had almost overlooked. A silver external hard drive, stored in a drawer labeled private storage in the basement office. No one knew of its existence. No lawyer had mentioned it. Tracy stumbled upon it by chance while searching for data on an old film project. Inside were decades of documents, scripts, and emails. And in a folder labeled Drafts, she found an untitled, undated text file, over 800 words. The very first line told Tracy what it was. I never wanted this to happen. This wasn't a script, not a diary. It was a confused, painful confession from a man on the verge of collapse. What was written revealed fear, regret, and helplessness. Elliot wasn't threatening. He was begging for help. He just wanted to end it all quietly. But fear led to wrong decisions. Silence became a weapon, and in the end, it consumed everything. What were the consequences of that? And what would happen when the truth was finally revealed? Rob admitted that Elliot hadn't blackmailed him. He acknowledged that the employee wasn't interested in money. But that was the end of the story. Rob confirmed Michelle's involvement in the decision to remain silent. And more importantly, he believed someone was coming for him. Someone who knew. Someone waiting. It wasn't just suspicion. It was a warning, a deep premonition. Just a few months later, Rob and Michelle were found dead under mysterious circumstances. Coincidence or the fulfillment of an omen? A chilling prophecy or just a terrifying coincidence? Tracy's reaction to reading the email surprised many. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, stunned. Because in that moment, the father she had built up her image her whole life had become a different person. A man full of fear, who had made mistakes, and who had let things escalate out of control. A man who had the chance to tell the truth, but chose to remain silent. And now, those lies are gone. Maybe 3, if Nick keeps the rest in prison. When asked why she decided to reveal the emails to the press, Tracy's answer was simple. The world deserves to know the real man behind the legend. Hiding it wouldn't bring him back. When the email excerpts were published, the media exploded. Newspaper headlines became chaotic. Rob Reiner had feared for his safety in his final writings. Tracy, by publishing the emails, shed light on the hidden aspects. The emails weren't intended to harm anyone, but they revealed the guilt, fear, and unforeseen consequences of Rob's decisions. Television shows and podcasts analyzed every word. The public was divided. Was Rob Reiner a broken man trying to atone for his mistakes, or a manipulator protecting his reputation at all costs? What were the legal consequences? The emails were not only emotionally charged, but also raised new legal questions. Why had Elliot Martin never been summoned? Why were the money transfers so obscure in the records? Why did Rob admit to being followed? Lawyers began pushing for an investigation. Tracy was summoned to testify again, while Nick's defense team viewed the emails as a lifeline. They argued that Rob's testimony revealed a broader picture, a conspiracy, or at least an orchestrated silence. At this point, Romy, who had remained silent since her whispered confession to the police, made a surprise. She released an unedited copy of the original emails. It was longer than the file Tracy had seen, and the previously omitted final section would completely change the picture. The final part of the email that Romy revealed reads, "I no longer trust Finley. He says he is protecting me, but I believe he's protecting himself. I saw the envelope he told me to destroy. It had." This is Elliot's true testimony, not the redacted version, not the destroyed one. If things go wrong, he's the only one who knows. Who is Marshall Finley? Rob's longtime private attorney, a close family friend, someone who handled inheritance planning and major legal matters. The man who showed up at the estate the day the cameras stopped working, resigned when the investigation began, and has connections to the Delaware firm that received the final payment. Attention shifts from Rob to Finley. If Elliot gave full testimony but Finley withheld it, does that imply obstruction of justice? And if Finley was previously involved in Elliot's silence, could he have interfered with later events? Tracy never wanted to ruin her father's reputation. She still loved him, still mourned him, but couldn't lie. The emails prove that Rob wasn't just running away from scandal. He was facing a force, an influence beyond his control, and perhaps wanted him gone. In the next chapter, the story delves into the shadows, to the man who may have orchestrated the silence, a powerful man with motives and everything to lose if the truth were revealed. And what turns a wounded son into a suspect? Nick Reiner is arrested for his parents' death, and public opinion immediately labels him a rebellious rich kid. But what if the story isn't that simple? What if Nick isn't just angry, but sending a warning? What if, instead of being a villain, he's the inevitable product of a family rotten from the inside? This chapter reveals Nick's past, the source of all his private actions and pain, contrasting sharply with his perfect public image. To the public, Nick was a stranger to the already well-known name of Reiner. The son of a Hollywood mogul, he lived largely in the shadows of the film world, constantly compared to and overshadowed. Nick once had a feature film script produced, Being Charlie, 2015, a semi-autobiographical drama about addiction and suffering. The film was a spectacular failure. Few knew that the content stemmed from Nick's own experiences. He had struggled with addiction since age 15, gone through drug abuse, alcoholism, depression, multiple overdoses and hospitalizations, and at one point nearly ended up in a psychiatric hospital after a failed suicide attempt in New York. Throughout that time, his father, Rob Reiner, kept everything secret. He hired managers, controlled public opinion, and managed information out of love, but also absolute control. Nick hated it. Those close to him said the relationship between father and son was extremely strained. Rob, organized, powerful, always in control. Nick, chaotic, emotional, yearning to be heard but often ignored. A former butler once described their relationship. Rob treated Nick like a project, not a person. He said, "My son is intelligent, but hurt." I never once heard him say, "I'm proud of you." Meanwhile, Nick always mentioned his father, but not as a son, but as a figure of power, a distant image. At family gatherings, the two rarely looked at each other. When they did interact, they were cold and distant, like two men forced to appear together in one frame. Detectives, after seizing Nick's personal diary and belongings, discovered torn pages, jumbled but chillingly thoughtful writing. Several excerpts reveal a state of mental instability and constant observation. If you bury a secret deep enough, it becomes a part of your very being. I heard doors slamming, shouts. I wanted to say stop, but I was the only sane one left. The Reiner family's last Thanksgiving was described by some close associates as tense. Nick arrived late, staggering, with a scruffy beard, and accompanied by an independent journalist, violating the no outsiders allowed rule. Rob was furious. He wanted Nick to take the man out. Nick refused. "I don't want to hide from you anymore." An argument ensued. Rob said, "You can't make fun of this. I've done everything for you." Nick replied, "Yes, you've done everything for me, including what happened to him," pointing forward. At the time, no one understood the meaning of the words, but in retrospect, it seems clearer now. According to Romy, in the months leading up to the crime, Nick frequently came to the house at night, uninvited, unannounced, sometimes just to chat, sometimes to take a walk. One night, she saw him standing outside her parents' bedroom, silently listening. When asked what he was doing, Nick simply said, I want to hear what lies sound like when they think no one's around." Then he left. Romy never mentioned it again, but now she believes he gathered the truth. Tracy recalled an incident in late October, 2 months before the crime. Nick came to a family dinner. He was calm, not drunk, highly focused. He pulled Rob aside and spoke briefly. Rob's expression changed, as if threatened. Rob told Tracy, "Nick isn't feeling well." The remark seemed to allude to things Nick shouldn't have known, perhaps about Elliot. And if Nick did know, his motive might not have been anger, but judgment. Among the evidence lay a torn-up old family photo on the living room table. Rob, Michelle, Nick, Tracy, Romy, all smiling, carefree. Now, just fragments. The photo symbolizes the shattered pieces of the Reiner family, where the perfect public image contrasted sharply with the pain and turmoil within. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. If you found the story fascinating and want to know more behind-the-scenes Hollywood mysteries, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Share your thoughts in the comments. What detail in the Reiner family case impressed you the most?